Hello, and welcome to another episode of Pittsburgh Sports Memories. We're the co-host. I'm Steve Wirt, and with me is.
Hi, I'm Tim Hannon.
And on this episode, we'll be talking about things that grind my gears. So this is stuff that's just like really annoying in sports, and sports fans like to complain. And so, I mean, some of these are Pittsburgh specific, but I guess some of these are more just like sports stuff, you know, just in general. So it should be fun. Some are a little more controversial than others. Some are just kind of like everybody like, yes, that's annoying. So we'll jump right in. So, I guess I'm old, and we'll try and not go too much into old man yelling at cloud territory today, or channel my inner Lewis Black. But here we go. This is like I've turned into my father category, probably. Instant replay, not instant replay, but like TV review replay, like where they're now actually like determining the outcome of plays. Talk about something that's totally ruined the sporting experience. It's just like, it seems like every week, and I guess this is more like football, though it seems like it's crept into hockey too. Like they just overanalyze everything. It's like, did the guy was his pinky toe in? Well, what did the ref call it? Did he call it in? Then let's just, move on with our lives. I realize, like, I guess people bet money on this and they get, all worked up, or their fantasy football team. Like, wasn't there, who was that baseball player that punched another baseball player over fantasy football? So maybe it is a little more serious than I think, but not to me, because I don't gamble or play fantasy football. But have you ever wanted to punch somebody over fantasy football, Tim?
Multiple times, and yes, I wanted to. Yes, wanted to really punch Sam Darnold once because he lost me a week of fantasy football by throwing 5 interceptions. But I think for instant replay, Steve, we're a Pittsburgh sports history show. One of the most exciting moments in Pittsburgh sports history was Santonio Holmes catching the touchdown in the Super Bowl, right? And what happened when he caught that ball? Did you jump up and celebrate, or did you say,
you had to hold your breath until Terry McAulay went in? We're like,
right.
Okay, yes. And then they showed like 2 million replays of it. It's like, oh, and then you still run into fans on Twitter. Oh, his foot wasn't down. Yes, it was. I mean,
but
come on.
But the point is, you can't. It's taken sort of the
spontaneous joy.
Yes,
yeah.
Spontaneous. Yeah. Thank you. That's a good word for it. Like, in that moment, you couldn't get excited because you're like, well, I think he scored a touchdown, but you couldn't celebrate until a referee came out and made an announcement. And that's your moment of drama, when you jump up and celebrate, not the moment he catches the ball. And so that's kind of how sports have gone, like you said, especially football. But that's, for me, that's what, and I can see, if they mess up a call and they overturn it, then certainly you're kind of happy it's there. But at the same time, yeah, it just takes all that kind of fun out of it.
And like you said, it delays the game. Like, games get longer and longer because you're sitting there like, and it seems like sometimes they just sit there and they try and like, I don't know what they're trying to do. Like, it's like they keep showing the same thing and it's like, okay, it's pretty obvious, or it's a 50-50. It's like, okay, just call something. Like in those cases when it's like pretty obvious, it's like, okay, why are we even doing this? And then when it's 50-50, it's like, you're still kind of like, why are we doing this? It's like whatever call you have, you could argue either way. So I don't know. It's just, I guess if I had money riding on it, I'd be a lot more upset about it. But especially if it's not the Steelers. Just the most was still the Jesse James catch. That's just like the catch or no catch. And then they ruled it one way 1 week and another way the other week. And then it's literally, that's a catch. And I don't care what, Rubiera or whatever his name is said, that was a catch. And I just, I still boggles my mind that got overturned. But it's just like too, TV loves it. It's like, oh, we're part of the game now. And like all those years, like there was no instant replay. Like there's still where mistakes are still made with instant replay, but they just like whined and whined and whined for years about not having instant replay. Just so desperate to be a part of the game. It's like, dude, just show the game.
There was a season, it was, so what happened in the NFL, they had instant replay in the 80s. And then I want to say it was like 1991, it went away because it was taking forever. It wasn't really working. And this was back in the days of like low definition TV. You didn't always have the best replay. And they didn't have it for about maybe 7 or 8 years. And it was a season, I believe it was the 1998 season.
Yeah, it was the Phil Luckett call. Yes. And then the one where that got Dennis Erickson fired from the Seahawks, where Vinny Testaverde got called in at the 3. Yeah.
So Vinny Testaverde like landed at like the 2-yard line, and they called it a touchdown, and that knocked the Seahawks out of the playoffs. And like Steve said, got their coach fired. That was also the same season that they blew the coin toss in the Steelers Thanksgiving Day game, although instant replay wouldn't have fixed that. And I think Jerry Rice fumbled. There was some incident where Jerry Rice fumbled in the playoffs, and
I remember that too. Yeah, his knee was not down.
Right,
was
and
down. Yeah.
The Packers would have won that game if they would have called that right. So that's what happened. There was just a slew of bad calls. The NFL is a super reactionary league. You know, when a bunch of things happen at once, or when the media decides they want to make a big deal about something. We've talked about this on the show before, right? About Bountygate, how, you know, that was a big deal, even though the Ravens had threatened the Steelers with a bounty the year before, or overtime rules. We've talked about that before, right? It just depends on what's being made a big deal of at the time. And so that year there was a lot of, oh my gosh, look at all these bad calls. And the pressure was on to bring it back. And it's been back ever since.
For better or worse. Yeah. And I think it's affected the rules, and some of the other stuff I'm going to complain about is definitely related to TV replay and high def TV. Cause like that Jesse James catch never gets, if there's not high def TV, that's a catch. Yeah. So, besides, you know, also another, like, we'll stick on TV here, like TV announcers just being ridiculous. Like, I know everybody loves Tony Romo, but I don't know if it's just me or like he's worn out his welcome with me. Like it's just like, oh, let's see what happens next. Like Tony, yeah, it's like that Kansas City game, like where I think it was Kansas City and Buffalo in that playoff game. It was just like, oh, let's see what happens next. Like, who cares, Tony? Like, they're like, big deal. You can read a defense. And it's like, I don't think anybody's ever said, oh, Tony Romo's announcing a game. I'm going to watch now who's two terrible teams, the Detroit Lions versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, because Tony Romo's announcing that game. It's like, come on. And they wouldn't give him that game anyway, because they always give him the better games than that. But
so that's an old one, Steve. That's one that my parents complained about. Like, so that one has been going on for generations. And we talked about that way back in our episode we did about the 80s Steelers, how, you know, back then people used to turn off the TV and turn on the Myron Cope and Jack Fleming on the radio, because it used to sync up back then. It doesn't anymore. You can't do that now with the signal delay. But that one goes way back. The announcers just sort of making themselves, I don't know what the word you want to use is, but becoming more of the star of the show than the players. And it's funny now, because you saw this off season that we're in right now while we're recording this episode, there were all kinds of people moving from one place to another for huge amounts of money. So the announcers are almost like, again, on the level of the players in terms of stars. And I agree with you. I can't imagine watching a game that I don't want to watch because fill in the blank is announcing.
Joe Namath. Was that we were? I remember making fun of Joe Namath.
If this was a grinds my gears from 1988, I would have told you that Joe Namath announcing games would have been one of mine back then. And And again, that's the thing. You always kind of, although I will say, it's annoying, but there's something, I don't know what the word is. There's something kind of fun about having your announcers that it's almost like having the heel in wrestling to root against, you know?
Oh, jeez. Like you need that bad guy to just make it, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if your team wins and then they have to like kind of eat crow. Like yeah, that really does make it kind of fun. But we're gonna Mr. Bob Costas is kind of gonna fall into this category. Like I think that's a person who takes himself way too seriously. It's like, dude, you announce baseball games. It's like you're good at it, but once again, I've never tuned into the World Series to, oh, let's hear what Bob Costas has to say about this. And it's just and another thing, and I don't know if Bob Costas started this or who started it, but like just injecting politics into sports in general. Like I think people turn on sports as an escape from reality. If you want to watch the news, like especially with cable news, like you can turn on your choice of cable news channel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and get all the news and politics you could ever want to see. You can go on the internet and do that, anything you want. Do we really, really, really need to find out what your views on gun control or whatever, abortion, pick your hot button issue today, the inflation? Gee, I wonder what, I don't know. I wonder what Joe Buck's view on the, Ukraine, the war in Ukraine is. Who cares? I mean, no offense to the poor people in Ukraine, but that doesn't really matter what his viewpoints are. Or I don't know. I mean, it just seems like it's not the. If this was like, Joe Buck was on CNN and he was on like a panel show talking about it, then I think I'd be okay with it. But like when it's in like sports, like if Bob Cost is in sports, we're here to watch baseball, not hear your viewpoints on all these other things. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's one that annoys a lot of people. And, some people, I think it just annoys them if the person doesn't share their view. Sometimes you'll see that where I don't, stay in your lane because I don't like your view. I tend to agree with you that I just would rather just, man, you're inundated with that stuff all the time. Go on social media, turn on the news, do anything. You're inundated with all this divisiveness and stuff like that. And you're right, sports is an escape. Like I want to watch a game because it's fun. It's something outside of that. And certainly athletes and coaches and everybody are entitled to their viewpoint, just like the rest of us. But, like you said, when you're watching ESPN or something, you're just watching it because you're trying to escape that stuff. And if you wanted to watch people yell at each other and debate the hot items of the day, then there's plenty of other places for that.
Yeah, and it like kind of goes back to like the whole anthem thing. Like, why do we? And I actually did some research on this. Like, why? Like, my viewpoint here's a controversial one. Let's just get rid of the national anthem before any sporting event. Just go. Why do we need to do it? This is along with they should just level the rainforest so it can be eliminated as a topic of conversation.
Yeah. That'd probably be less popular.
Yeah. But but what happened was, I guess it started in 1918 after World War I. Some team in Chicago, it was the Red Sox and the Cubs, and the Cubs started playing. They just spontaneously played in the seventh inning stretch the Star Spangled Banner, which I don't think was technically the national anthem even at that point. I don't think it had become it yet. Like we didn't have a national anthem at that point. So it just kind of like went from there. And then it got more popular when World War II. And then it kind of went away again after World War II. And then it came back like in like the 60s, and it's kind of been around ever since the 60s. So, I mean, I don't know. I only know the words of the Canadian national anthem because I've went to so many hockey games. So I guess it's educated me on that. I mean, if you got that going on, and you got to see lots of cool pictures of Canada on the little jumbotron before the game. But I mean, Are you ready to sing the Canadian national anthem, Tim? Or no?
I actually know the words also. I will not sing it. I was going to say, actually, Steve, that to your point, to bring this back to Pittsburgh sports history, there haven't been a whole lot of that I can think of off the top of my head, a whole lot of Pittsburgh sports figures that have delved real deeply into, hot political takes or things like that. And the only one I could really think of that even caused a stir was the Steelers' whole national anthem thing in Chicago, which ironically they were trying not to cause a stir by staying in the tunnel and not taking a position on that whole thing, and then it ended up causing a stir because
But then
of that.
Villanueva did his own thing.
Right, he stepped out a few steps, and we talked about that in our soap opera season episode. But even it's funny, things are so divisive now. Even when you're trying to stay out of it, like they were then, you end up getting, causing some kind of controversy. So I would not, I agree with you. If well, right now it seems like that's faded. Doesn't seem like that's a thing anymore where people kneel or there people even talk about it because, we have other stuff to get upset about now. There's 15 minutes past that we were so passionate about it.
Yeah.
Now we're super passionate about something else. So, but I agree with you. I don't, at the time, I wondered, why do you even need to play it? Or why do you need to bring the players out? There was a time when the NFL, not long before that, the players used to be in the locker room during that. Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, here in the article from USA Today, it said Pete Rozelle actually, which would have been before that, because I do remember them saying Pete Rozelle had a policy that players stand at attention during the anthem. Because I remember this. I remember them doing this with helmets tucked under their arms, and they were not to talk, chew gum, or move their feet. So the NFL actually did have a policy. And I think somebody wanted to protest or something. And they said, fine, just stay in the locker room then. And I know the NBA did something like that. Somebody didn't want to be involved with the national anthem. They said, well, just stay in the locker room then and come out after it's over. You don't have to participate in it. So it's like, why do we even do it? I'm not sure. They always say to honor America. It's like, okay, that's great. But I mean, I don't know. I don't understand the logic behind that. Like they said here too, I guess before movies they would do that. They would play. Could you imagine going to a movie? I'm here to see pick a movie. I don't know, Gremlins 2. Freeze Rise for the national anthem. I'll try to do what would even be a worse movie? I don't even know. I can't. Either Jaws 3. Before we see a bunch of people getting eaten by Jaws, please put your hand over the heart and rise and listen to our national anthem. Well, but it's just odd. It's just odd. So going back to announcers that are annoying, Joe Buck. Remember when Joe Buck got upset over Randy Moss? He did not moon people. He pantomimed mooning people. Joe Buck, that was just over the line. Literally, we did not see any of Randy Moss's posterior, but just because he pantomimed showing it, that was over the line for good old Joe there. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's happened with Pittsburgh sports figures too. I remember the NBC's reaction to Tyler Palko.
Oh yeah,
he was so bleeping proud of his team.
Ruined that, yeah.
When Pitt beat Notre Dame, I mean, yeah, just the I'm aghast reaction of people. Yeah, that's always kind of just makes you roll your eyes a little bit.
Yeah, Joe. He's no Jack, that's for sure. He didn't want to see you next tomorrow or whatever. Why does the end of you're going along, right? So a football game used to start at 1:00, right? And they start at 1, and most of the time they're over by 4. So you're cruising along. It's halftime at 2. And by 2:30, it starts back up. And by 3:15, you get to the end of the third quarter. Why does it take from 3:15 p.m. to 4:30 to play 15 minutes of football? why does it take 45 minutes to play 15 minutes? So this goes into my end of games taking forever, or just games in forever, like in general. Like I think I was watching Utah. Don't ask me why. I was watching Utah versus Dallas, I think, in the NBA playoffs just recently. And like they were showing commercials. It was like literally 5 minutes of commercials. And they come back and like, who's the big player for Donkovic for Dallas? Like drives the court in like 10 seconds, like gets fouled, puts up a shot. And then like, apparently I didn't know this. This is how much I watch NBA basketball. You can challenge like foul calls. Can you believe you can challenge foul calls? So like you literally had 20 seconds, if that, no, because the shot clock's 24 seconds in the NBA. So they literally had 7 seconds of action after 10 minutes of commercial, had a replay, and they went back to commercial for, I turned it off after that minute. I was like, I'm not going to watch like 15 minutes of commercials to watch 7 seconds of NBA exciting. It's fantastic. So, I mean, that's just, and that's everything. Like baseball, like the 8th and 9 innings, like baseball's slow enough, but then it seems like the 8th and 9 innings take forever. But there are two, like I would say the exceptions to that are kind of hockey and soccer. Like soccer seems to move through, like there's not as many stoppages, although they're starting to get there with like some of the video reviews. And hockey too, like it seems to move along. I don't know. I mean, you actually go to the games. Does it seem like the fourth quarter lasts forever? Or is that just me?
Well, it seems like that. I don't know. There's something about like, hey, the game's about to end. I mean, I've always been kind of interested in this idea that there was a playoff game. The Steelers were playing the Jaguars in Mike Tomlin's first season. They were down by 18 points in the fourth quarter, and they actually came back to take the lead, and then they ended up losing. But that fourth quarter it felt like it was a whole nother game at that point. And it's always interesting that when they get into the fourth quarter, it seems like every play not only takes longer, but like is more is executed better. Like it's not, you know what I mean? And I mean, if taking on Pittsburgh example, look at that Kansas City Buffalo playoff game where what did they have 13 seconds and they drove down the field and scored a field goal.
I've never seen that before. And like that's like basketball. It's like it's like
so
I've never seen
when you have that kind of stuff happen, then it's like I feel like maybe it's that it just makes the games longer. But if you watch old-timey games from like the 70s, if you watch like the end of some of the Steelers Super Bowls against Dallas where they were trying to come back at the end, you know, there's not a ton of, you know, there might be like some Hail Marys, but there's not a ton of precise you know, get the ball out of bounds, like hit a quick 10-yard out, then get out of bounds, then hit another quick 10 yards and call a timeout. It's just kind of like a desperation. Well, try your best to score. And now I feel like it's so precise and so, I don't know, it's very different now. So maybe that contributes to it as well.
I think too, like sometimes like I know your brain does is it's like evolved like that, like your perception of time in a crisis. Like, you know, if like you're driving a car and somebody swerves in your lane and you have to swerve out of the way, it seems like it takes forever for all that to happen where it happened in like 5 seconds. So I don't know if there's some of like our perception of how time is kind of being messed with because your brain slows everything down to process it. But a little psychology. See, who knew you get psychology on the Pittsburgh Sports Memories?
That's actually a really interesting point. It would be interesting to like real clock every other quarter of a close game. You'd have to do it obviously for a close game, but like in real time, how long did the first, second, and third quarter take? Versus in real time, how long did the fourth quarter take?
I can't tell you how many times it's like you look at the clock and it's like 3:15 and it's like, oh, okay, we're going to the fourth quarter. Oh, this one's going to be over by like 3:30, 3:45. It's like, it's 4:30. We're just wrapping this up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, How about the season just being insanely too long? Who would be who would be your guess, like the worst? Who would be your worst offender of your season being way too long, Tim?
Well, if I obviously baseball would be a prime candidate there with 162 games. Is that what they play in baseball?
Yeah.
So that's a long one, and I think especially because the Pirates are so often out of it by June that you just, I mean, at that point, I mean, it's almost depressing if you think about how many months over the last 40 years that the Pirates have played with nothing on the line. Like they have played thousands and thousands and thousands of games that meant nothing to anyone. So to me, that's too long. Hockey's a little long too, but at least in hockey, there's still a chance that you might have a shot at the playoffs, even if you're bad, somewhat late in the season, and probably because there's so many playoff teams. So maybe the number of playoff teams in hockey helps balance it out, and I think they're trying to do that now in baseball. But to me, baseball's the longest. I mean, obviously it's the longest by number of games, but it feels the longest too.
Well, it goes from April to November. That's insane. Like, that's what, 3, is that 7
Most
months?
of the year.
6? Yeah, I mean, 3 + 9 is 12, right? Or no, 3 + 8 is 11. So that's 8 months out of the year. That's over half the year. And like, to your point, I always thought hockey was like you get rid of the first month of the season in hockey and it really wouldn't matter. But like, I guess too, like I've always heard like somebody to say like by Christmas, if you're like in hockey, like the playoff, if you're in playoff position by then, you're probably going to make the playoffs. Like it's like a real high percentage. Basketball ain't much better. And football started to like, oh my goodness, it goes to February. Like when they do, like today was the day of the Immaculate Reception. It's like week 16. Like it's like, oh wow, they were playing the divisional round of the playoffs. Yeah, it's like, oh man, and it's just football's just starting to even drag. Like 17 weeks of football is like probably way too much.
Yeah, the Steelers, when they played Baltimore that last game of the season in 2021 last year, that was middle of January for the last regular season game, which is crazy. I mean, that was the AFC Championship game not long ago. It was the middle of January. So yeah, it's gotten much longer.
So now their seasons are way too long. Let's start. What about officials? Who doesn't want to like those guys? Like celebrity umpires. If you remember, like I don't think Angel Hernandez is like a celebrity. I think he just like people don't like him because he's not a very good umpire. But like Joe West was definitely like, ooh, look at me kind of umpire. Like if you remember Joe West, like he would just throw people out of games for no reason. But here we're gonna have some officials here from the past that you may or may not remember. Here you go. Here's like 3 minutes of Ed Hockley over explaining things.
There was no foul on the play. It was not a hold. The defender was just overpowered. Yes, there are penalties in the Pro Bowl. Pass interference. Defense number 24. The ball is placed at the 1-yard line. First down.
And keep in mind, you have a new center for Carson Palmer this year.
The whole offensive line. 5-yard penalty.
The whole offensive line.
Second down. Before the ball was snapped, false start. Offense number 79 was moving backwards. 5-yard penalty. It's second down. There were 2 fouls by the defense. Offense. Correct. I'm sorry.
He's a lawyer.
Offside defense. That penalty is declined. There's also personal foul face mask. That penalty is enforced half the distance to the goal. First down. Foul on the prior play. My flag was being returned to me. It was tossed back to me, hit the ground. When that happened, the clock operator thought there was a penalty and stopped the clock. The clock should have continued to run. There should be 12 seconds taken off the clock. So it should be 124. Take the play clock down 12 seconds as well. The ball, before the pass was completed, the ball was being touched by the defender who was out of bounds. Therefore, the loose ball before the completion was touching a player who was out of bounds. Therefore, by rule, that's an incomplete pass. No timeouts are charged.
They deem while the ball's being moved.
To reverse and replay, there must be clear, uncontroverted evidence that the ruling on the field was wrong. In other words, you have to be certain. Here, the ruling on the field stands. It is a touchdown. That unsportsmanlike conduct penalty will be enforced on the kickoff.
Here's Ed Hochuli.
There was an illegal motion by the offense, number 80, never got set before the snap. That foul, when under a minute, causes the ball to be bone dead before the snap. Therefore, the offside on the defense did not occur. The foul was before the snap. The clock should be reset to 24 seconds. That's what it was at the time of the snap. The illegal motion inside 1 minute requires a 10-second runoff. Therefore, the clock goes to 24, and then reset the clock to 14 seconds, and it's third down. The ruling on the field stands as called. However,
Please, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, that's Ed Hochuli over explaining a bunch of things. Like, can you tell he's a lawyer, Tim?
Yeah.
He's actually retired. They retired. Ed Hochuli wasn't that bad of an official, actually, but he just, some of his explanations were helpful. These were probably some of the worst examples. I like the one, like a subtract 12, add 2, 1, divide by 0. And yeah, let's do pi r squared. It's like, come on, Ed, it's just football. We don't want a math lesson.
Yeah, that was pretty entertaining.
Or like, there's no penalties in the Pro Bowl, but that's kind of like, we really don't pay to see the officials. But another good example. Here we go. I don't know if anybody I know I remember this guy vaguely, and this is actually from Super Bowl 30. So I'm sorry if I trigger anyone here.
Aikman to Novacek, the tight end. First and goal, I believe. It's inside the 3. Flag down, but it's on the side from the linesman where Kevin Green jumped early. And Mason Lee Cashin of Texas A&M and College Station says offside Pittsburgh, and the Cowboys will take the play.
It's a first down. If they indeed is against Pittsburgh, it'll be a first and goal.
Offsides. Number 91 on the defense. That penalty is declined. Touchdown!
First down.
There's the Red Cashin patented first down. I don't know, is Red Cashin still alive? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but I completely forgot about that guy. And you're right. I probably tried to block out the fact that he was the one that called Super Bowl 30, and that the Steelers were getting penalties. That was in the first half too of that game.
After Larry Brown's interception, first down.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
But who else we got here? We got one more person, I think. Want to play? Okay, here, I went with hockey. This is kind of newer. Wes McCauley. Well, what Wes McCauley does, this is impressive.
View, which will decide whether or not this puck actually crosses a line. And here's
listen to Wes McCauley.
They're reviewing a goal to see if it crossed the line. This is what, Rangers and Ducks. And Wes McCauley just pretends he's Ryan Seacrest, apparently.
I think the Rangers are on television commercial break right now, and he's waiting for the red light to be turned off.
Yeah, the fans.
I think there's a Rangers goal too. They were debating, and this is in New York, so.
It was determined that the puck completely crossed the goal line. We have a goal.
So that was completely unnecessary, Wes McCauley. He completely crossed the goal, and come on, really.
That one's kind of new with hockey, because that referees having a microphone in hockey, that's a fairly newer thing, right? The football, that's been years and years, but hockey, they used to just make calls with their arms and you wouldn't hear from them. And now with replay and everything, they give them a mic. Even with penalties, they announce penalties now, and that's I don't know when that started, Steve, but I want to say it's in the last 5 or 10 years.
Like you said, just kind of call the game, and do we really need to hear from you? And I guess some of the explanations are necessary, but you have to know. Remember, now this is old. Remember, you used to have to know all the signals of the officials if you wanted to know, because they didn't, like you said, they didn't have a microphone. You had to know holding and touchdown and offsides, and like even in baseball, like what the right hand is always strike, and they normally don't say anything for ball, but if they signal with their right hand, it's a strike. If you don't hear them, call it, or like really ring somebody up, But and then hockey too, they had slashing, like you said, they had the hand signals. So
my favorite baseball umpire was Lieutenant Frank Drebin.
Yeah, strike.
Yeah.
How about like off the field stuff, like stupid stuff? This is mainly like NCAA kind of silliness, like taking away wins because of something that happens off the field. Like an example would be like Michigan in like what they lost their Final Four. Like, remember that time like the Fab Five won all those national championships? Well, erase it from your memory because it didn't happen. They weren't the best team in college. I don't know who really won. I guess the runner-up, whoever they beat in the championship game, really won the basketball championship that year. Because what? Because Chris Webber took money or something stupid. And it's just like, who cares? They still won. If you want to penalize them going forward. How does like taking away their championship really affect, like, are you going to go into my brain and like somehow suck that memory out? I don't know.
Yeah, I've never understood that. Joe Paterno, who I have no love for, but
like he still won those games, and I don't know that like that stuff really all that and that was way more horrific than anything Michigan did. But like, I don't understand how that punishes them. It's like, you don't have 400 wins now. He only lost 200 of his wins.
Well, and people around here got very upset about it that are Penn State fans. And it's like, yeah, like to your point, it's like, okay, but he won, like anything he won and you celebrated, he still won,
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, you'd have to get the little Men in Black zapper thing, and like you said, go erase everybody's memories because they still remember that happening. So I've never really understood that either. Like you said, if you're going to impose sanctions, do it on the future team or whatever. Like if you think a school committed an egregious penalty, then say, okay, we're taking away your scholarships, or you're not eligible for bowl games or the NCAA basketball tournament or whatever. Right, punish them that way if you feel like they need to be punished, but you can't erase the past. That's silly.
Yeah. Going back to like obsessively changing the rules every year, I've complained about that. Like, have I proposed I think they should have like in every sport you go to this, like they should have like a 4-year like just like review of the rules, like every 4 years, or just pick like a number of years where you can only review and change like a set amount of rules every 4 years, or whatever time limit that is. That way, because like at least baseball used to be good about that. They didn't change the rules very much, but then like even baseball's fallen into that the last couple of years. They just, oh my goodness, like now what extra innings you start with a guy on second? What is this like? Tournament softball. I mean, come on. That's just dumb. Like football, we've complained about the football overtime so much ad nauseum. That was because poor Brett Favre didn't get to touch the ball one time. And, even hockey, like I know people enjoy the 3-on-3, but that's not even like real hockey. I'd rather see like non-sudden death, like 5-on-5 hockey, and then go to a shootout like soccer does. Like, I don't know. I know 3-on-3, it really isn't hockey at that point. It's just, I don't know what it is, but it's definitely weird.
So I actually like the 3-on-3, so I won't say anything about that one. But I agree with you about.
I mean, if
the
you wanted
reactionary stuff.
well, you just like it because it's more. I don't know. It's just like not hockey at that point.
It's
me.
not.
Just,
It's a gimmick, but it's fun to watch. So
I guess they don't have it in the playoffs. Like if it's so
Right.
great, put it in the playoffs.
Both teams get a point already when they were in overtime for hockey, so it's just for that extra point. So I'm kind of okay with that because of that reason. But I think with rule changes, again, to just kind of center this back on Pittsburgh, the thing that's frustrated me is all the reactionary rule changes over the years, very few of them have benefited the Steelers. So just top of my head stuff, the overtime rules are a great example. We talked about this before, so I won't beat it to death, but Tommy Maddox didn't get to touch the ball in overtime against the Titans in the playoffs. Nobody cared. Brett Favre didn't get to touch the ball. We had to change the rules. Ben Roethlisberger didn't get to touch the ball after Tim Tebow scored a touchdown. We didn't change the rules, but Josh Allen didn't get to touch the ball. Oh my gosh, we had to change the rules, right? Hines Ward blocked somebody, got to change the rules. Mel Blount chucks people at the line of scrimmage, got to change the rules. So it just feels like the Steelers never, or any Pittsburgh team really, ever benefits from these rule changes, and it's always either reactionary to something they did or too late of a reaction. The only thing, going back to your earlier in the episode, that I can think of is the Jesse James thing, because after that season they did modify the catch rule finally.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that at least
that was like the third time that happened. Like
it was
Dez Bryant and
yes.
Who was
Calvin Johnson.
Calvin Johnson, yeah.
Right.
It was getting ridiculous at that point.
It was, but that's probably the one time I can think of when they had a reactionary rule change that actually either benefited the Steelers, maybe the coin toss thing too, because they did change the coin toss rule to that you had to call it before it was in the air because of what happened on Thanksgiving. Although that wasn't really, neither before or after that had anything like that ever happened. So I don't know that was really a big deal. But yeah, most of the time those rule changes are just reactionary, like you said. The one year, remember, they had you could review pass interference, and that ended up burning the Steelers. They were playing Seattle at Heinz Field in 2019, and that cost them huge in that game because they challenged pass interference. That kind of stuff just always seems to burn Pittsburgh teams. And again, that might just be my brain remembering that way, and I don't have any hard evidence to back that up. But I'm with you. I think that you shouldn't take some time, think about how you want to do things, rather than just react to
that way
whatever the moment says.
It keeps the sport the same too. It's like you're like I said, you change 8 rules a year for 5 years. You've changed 40 rules. You aren't even playing the same sport you played 5 years ago. Whereas if you could only change, like, let's say they pick, okay, you can change 10 rules every 4 years, at least, and then, okay, in 4 years, we didn't like this rule that got changed. Well, you live with it for 4 years and then you just change it back or modify it. So I don't know. I just think it would eliminate some of the just knee-jerk reaction stuff that's going on. Also, like in stuff that like coaches taking advantage of the rules, and the two biggest, well, I'd say the biggest offender of this is Bill Belichick, just absolutely torturing. Now, him and Mike Vrabel did that stupid waste of time at the end of third quarter thing, where they were taking intentional. What'd they take? They were punting and the waste they took 2, you could take 2 but not 3, because then it became a personal foul and they would stop the clock. So he took 2 to run out the clock, and it was just okay, this is dumb. And Vrabel did it, and it was funny because Belichick didn't. It was he, and then Vrabel did it to him, and he got all mad. And I'm sure they've changed that rule, because Belichick's on the rules committee. I'm sure he's changed it. Also, remember when Belichick played games with the eligible tackles against the Ravens in a playoff game? They didn't know who was eligible. It was just funny because I didn't know who to root for. It's it's annoying that Belichick did that, but that he did it to the Ravens was hilarious. And then I think they ended up losing that game. The Patriots ended up losing that game anyway, didn't they?
No, they won, and it was.
Did they win that one?
It was
Yeah.
largely because of that. They were down by 14 and they came back because of him bending the rules. And that's Belichick. He just always finds loopholes.
Yeah, so I mean that was always fun. Like, but yeah, it's just football has so many rules to begin with. It's just it gets insane. How about like football? Like we're talking about the seasons being too long. Like football preseason, like preseason in most sports is a waste of time. But I think like spring training in baseball, maybe the pitchers need that. But I can't imagine of anybody else in baseball needing that. But football preseason, what a waste of time. Oh my goodness. And they make the season ticket holders pay for those games. You have to pay for those. Is it 2 games now or 4? They went to 2, right? Yeah, because they added a game. Or it's 3? 3, because yeah. I mean, that's ridiculous. And NHL has preseason games too, which they're even a bigger joke, but I mean, who's the goof? I've gone to them, so but I mean, I guess it's nice if you can't afford a regular season NHL game, but I'm not even like if you thought the regular season in NHL was a joke, boy, go to an NHL preseason game. It's even worse. Like college football, like here's a kind of a college football category. Like college football teams, like they don't have a preseason, so it kind of plays into this. So they would always play like, okay, we're going to play like a lower division team. Okay, that's fine and well if you think you need like a warm-up game. But like I noticed this now has crept in like since like once again they've expanded their season to 12 games. Like for some reason in like late November, all of a sudden Alabama's playing Samford for no reason. It's like, why? Why are we like if you want to play that game in the first 2 weeks of your season, I guess just as a tune-up, like that's just a pure moneymaker because they know they'll make people buy season tickets for that. And the people in the SEC where it just means more, like how does a game against Samford just mean more? I mean, especially late in the season, but I mean, you could lose to those opponents. I mean, Pitt's only done it once. I mean, there's been other teams that have been lost, like, and then they stopped playing like the teams like North Dakota State or Appalachian State that were good. Like they don't play those teams anymore because they're too good. We have to find a team that's really bad.
It's a good thing Pitt never lost any of those games. So
they've only lost one.
Well, they've lost a couple. They lost to Youngstown State.
No, that's the only time they've ever lost.
Bowling Green. They lost to Bowling Green.
That's
in 2008.
That's a Division I school.
Well, I meant the tune-up game. I'm saying they lost the tune-up.
Well, I think a pure tune-up game is like when you play like Youngstown State or Delaware or like, you know what I mean, North Dakota State. Like I guess Appalachian State is in Division I now.
Yeah.
They moved up.
I think a tune-up game is anybody that's out of conference that's not Power 5. I think that's meant to be
I think that's
game.
I don't know. I mean, but I always thought I don't know what those teams are. They're like in limbo, like because like the lower, like the North Dakota States and those teams can go in and get. Well, now with the transfer rules, like because you don't have to. Used to be you didn't have to sit out a year if you went to those schools. So now that you don't have to sit out a year at all, maybe the talent gap isn't going to be like because it used to be like you said, like those Bowling Greens, those teams are way worse than the top teams in that Division I AA or whatever they FCS or whatever they call it. I guess FCS, right? Yeah. So like those teams I always thought were way better, like those top teams, because they could always get the top recruits, like the guy that was sitting the bench in Florida because like they had Tim Tebow or something. He would go to like, you know, one of those schools and not sit out a year and you'd end up with like a really good player, especially a quarterback. And something
You could probably do a whole episode on college football grinding gears.
Yeah, well, here's another good one. How about this? How about college football just refuses to have a playoff? They will not have it. They're not going to do it. It's never going to happen. It's just like they have this like whatever half rear-ended system that they have now. Like I don't even know what this system is. It's like they're still voting on people to go to this playoff. Like, why do we need to vote? You have everybody's pretty much in a conference, and if you want to have you want to have some sort of 8-team playoff with one at-large bid, just in case one of the independents is good enough to make it. There you go. You want all your voting there. You get to vote on one team. Yay. You can still have your committee. It's so easy to do. And it's like, whoa, the Sun Belt. Well, then why does the Sun Belt play Division I college football? Either you are or you aren't. And I think I've complained about that before, but
it's ridiculous. Here's a great question. We're recording this in 2022. Last season, the 2021 season, did the University of Pittsburgh football team win a championship?
Well, they at least won the ACC championship, and that's legit. You can't, that wasn't voted on, that was decided on the field.
So is that a championship? So if you're counting championship.
It counts as a conference championship.
Okay, so what were they eligible for other than that? That they didn't win? So were they eligible to win a So let's say let's talk about high school football in Western Pennsylvania. I think there's 6 divisions or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Penn Trafford High School, they won whatever Division 4, whatever it is. They were not eligible to win the one that Mount Lebanon won, which was the highest one, the biggest schools, right?
Yes.
But did Penn Trafford win a championship last year?
Yes, they did, because they won a state. They still if they went on and won a state championship.
But they didn't beat Mount Lebanon.
But with Mount Lebanon, is Mount Lebanon in that like 6 that higher?
Yes.
Yeah, no, they didn't, because they're in different levels.
Right.
Because that's how they break up the schools.
Right. So was Pitt at the same level, or the same division as Alabama or Georgia?
Well,
were they even eligible for that?
Technically, but you could still in high school, like they used to have they have those different like the WPIAL. You can win the WPIAL and not win a state title.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just did they win a championship?
Well, they won the ACC, whatever that means. I mean, that's the same as winning the WPIAL. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
You won the WPIAL, but you didn't win a state championship. It's just
no. Penn Trafford. Let's say, I can't remember if they did. Let's say Penn Trafford did win the state championship.
Well, Bishop Canevin. I know Bishop Canevin won the WPIAL, whatever division they play in, like division whatever 3A.
Okay, so did they win a championship?
Well, they won the WPIAL championship.
Okay,
but I don't think they won the state. I think they lost to like Bishop McDevitt or somebody, or Erie.
Penn Trafford won the state. So did they win a championship?
Yes, because they won the state.
Oh, but they won. But they didn't beat Mount Lebanon.
Because they're in a different level too. Like not all the schools play at the same level.
That's
like Alabama won the overall, but they didn't play. They didn't play North Dakota State because they're or Wisconsin Whitewater, whoever won Division III. Or
that's what I'm saying. That's what college football is. Pitt plays at the level. Last year, the ACC was deemed to be at the level of Penn Trafford High School, and the SEC was deemed to be at the level of Mount Lebanon High School. Pitt and Wake Forest in the ACC were never eligible for the college football playoff.
But that doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So did Pitt win a championship?
Like, because if you're gonna,
why would you just?
Yeah,
they won. Penn Trafford won the only championship it was eligible for. So did Pitt.
Well, that's all you can do. I mean, but it's just stupid. It's a stupid setup. There's too many teams in the FBS division. That FBS, I've said before, you could split up into 3 divisions and it would be better. It would be a better, like, because like why, like I'm sure somebody won the Sun Belt and somebody wearing the Mountain West. What did they win? You know, who won those conferences, right?
Yeah, and they weren't eligible for the same championship that Alabama and Georgia were eligible for.
Who won the Big Ten? Like, did the Big Ten even make it to the playoff last year? I don't even remember.
But that's just my point. It's like they deem that certain conferences are eligible and certain conferences aren't. Because Clemson wasn't as competitive last year, middle of the season, it was deemed that the ACC wasn't eligible for the college football playoff. Even when Wake Forest was undefeated, they weren't eligible for the college football playoff. They were like 11th in the votes or whatever. So if they deem that your conference isn't eligible, then you've won the only championship that you're eligible for. To me, that's a championship. I mean,
It's a championship of the ACC at least. Yeah,
in our last episode, we talked about the 1902 Pirates won the National League pennant.
But yeah, that's all you could win. They didn't play the American League yet.
Yeah, there was no World Series at the point. Is that not a championship? Because they weren't eligible to play anything after that.
I guess it's the same kind of question, I guess, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's dumb. So in 1902, I get that because it was 1902, but now major college football, you shouldn't have that
They can't
scenario.
take a train. They can't have Pitt take a train or whatever.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that there's just not, you're voting on a champion. That's dumb. So to me, the 2021 Pitt team won a championship because they were not eligible to play in anything other than what they played in, and they won it. That's a championship.
They did lose their bowl game forever. That was worse.
No, that didn't count because guys didn't even play in that. That didn't count for anything. That's the Pro Bowl. So again, the if you do an analogy here, the NFL, right? The Rams won the only championship they were eligible for, and the Pitt won the only championship they're eligible for. I don't see any difference.
Okay. I'm not sure what we're arguing about, but sure.
Oh, we're not arguing. I'm just reinforcing.
I'm not sure I'm following your logic, but
I'm reinforcing your point that the college football having no championship leaves championships open to subjective interpretation.
Who is it who claimed the championship the one year? Was that UCF? They're like, yeah, we're champions too.
Why not?
They went undefeated. Yeah, I think
you vote for it. People vote for it. Why not? There's no official anything that says somebody's a champion. It's just it's subjective. It's a subjective thing. So you might as well just claim your own. I would do that if I were Pitt. I'd put up a banner.
Well, they'll put up the ACC champions, I'm sure.
I would just put up National Championship 2021.
Nice.
Why not?
Well,
I'm not kidding about that. But yes, I just think to reinforce your point. Embarrassing. To reinforce your point, that's a joke.
Here's another thing that grinds my gears. Since we ground our gears pretty good there, college conferences realignment and conferences in general. Maybe it's just because I'm a Pitt fan and they were always an independent. If the ACC went away tomorrow, would you miss them, Tim? Would you miss that big Pitt Wake Forest rivalry? I mean, would anyone really care if Pitt played Duke in football ever again? Heck, in basketball, would they even care? Wouldn't you rather Pitt play Georgetown or Penn State or West Virginia than Duke and North Carolina? I would. That's just me. But no. We got to be in the ACC, and I wouldn't even care. You could say about the Big Ten. If Pitt never played Iowa or Northwestern or Ohio State ever again, I wouldn't. I'd rather play Penn State, Notre Dame, and West Virginia than any of those other like random schools from any of those other conferences. I'd rather play Miami every year. We already do, but you know what I mean? It's just I'm so tired of conferences. They need to go away. They've ruined college football. Like the combination of TV and college conferences have ruined college football. They really have.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, Pitt versus Duke or Pitt versus NC State or Pitt versus all these other ACC schools. There's no. It's
even
nothing
if they were
like
in the Big Ten, Tim. Who would care if they played
Right.
Indiana?
The fact that we don't play Penn State and West Virginia anymore
and
has
Notre
taken
Dame.
so much.
Yeah.
Well, they still play Notre Dame
Every so
fairly
often.
regularly, but the fact that they don't play Penn State and West Virginia hardly at all, that's ruined a lot of the fun of what college football was for Pitt fans.
So it's something that we'll probably agree on, grinding our gears here. Baseball not having a salary cap. But I think the bigger problem now is baseball not having a salary floor. I think that's the bigger issue, really. Like, you can basically put a team on the field for minimum wage. Why don't you just pay everybody $9 an hour and you could really make a lot of money. I shouldn't give Bob Nutting any ideas.
I was going to say, doesn't he pretty much already do that?
Yeah. I mean, the salary, not like, and I don't understand like how you don't like sell that. I think I've said this before. Like, if I'm like Bob Nutting and I seriously want to be competitive instead of just making money, but I think you would make more money by being competitive than just being the joke you are. Like, honestly, pitch the mediocre players. We're going to get a salary floor. You're going to get a raise, and that's going to benefit you more than, all the big name free agents that just get there. We're going to get a salary cap, but we're going to get a salary floor. And if you get enough of those people to vote, I think majority rules in the baseball union world. So there's more of those mediocre to lower tier players than there are Garrett Coles and Justin Verlanders of the world, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. You'd have more numbers for sure, but for some reason they can't do that. I mean, they just went through this last offseason where
and they didn't fix anything.
No, they didn't, and they didn't even propose a salary cap or floor. So nobody wants it. They're happy with the Red Sox and Yankees and Dodgers always being in the playoffs, and teams like the Pirates and other small market teams never really having much of a chance. Now, I do guarantee you that if they did have a salary cap and salary floor, that the Pirates would still mess it up because of the current ownership, but at least you'd have a fighting chance.
So moving on to the fans, what about fan behavior, Tim? You've gone to Steeler games, you know how it is. Like, how many times have you seen fighting at the games? Like, it's literally a sporting event. Am I like, and I know like the Pitt, West Virginia thing can get pretty heated, but oh my goodness, it was crazy. Like, just like I've seen fights at like people that are normally like reasonable, like just lose their mind and want to fight like 20 fans from an opposing team. Like, is this that serious to you? Like, man, don't you have anything else in your life to care about? I mean, no offense. I mean, I guess, I do a podcast, so I think I care a lot about sports, but I don't think I've ever like really been in a situation. I mean, there's been a situation like the Michigan State one year was at Pitt and they were annoying. Their fans are annoying just mainly because their team has never won anything. You've never won anything ever. Like, when's their last national championship? Like the 60s or 40s? And their fans are just totally obnoxious. But that's about as close as I've got. Even the West Virginia fans. I understand the West Virginia fans. And Penn State fans just think they're like, they have like some weird sense of like, I don't know, like morality that I don't understand. But like the West Virginia fans, I understand the slight because everybody kind of looks down on them because they're from West Virginia. So I get that. But like, I even like, as much as the Michigan State fans annoyed me, I did not want to fight any of them. I just didn't want to.
Yeah, the answer to your question of why people care so much, it's a chemical that's called alcohol.
Yeah,
and that's usually
lower inhibitions. Yeah,
right. That's usually what fuels those kinds of things at sporting events. And you're right, fans can be very annoying. I think West Virginia fans, Penn State fans, Dallas Cowboy fans. Not that the Steelers play the Cowboys all that often at home, but when they do, Dallas fans are just the most obnoxious. But you're right, to get to the point of like wanting to fight somebody. That's really alcohol fueled most of the time.
So what about running out on the field? Have you ever felt the need to run out on the field and interject yourself into the game? Because I just don't think a trip to prison and, getting some sort of misdemeanor crime is really worth it. It's so bad. And like, does Philadelphia still have their own little jail? I think at the new stadium. Remember the vet hat? I think the new stadium, and they have a judge there and everything who has to work the Eagles games to sentence all the people that are fighting. It's like, that's the most Philadelphia thing ever.
It is, but certainly we've had some not so great behavior here as well.
I wonder if like in the jail cell it has like a little Eagles logo, and the judge wears like what jersey? He wears like a Nick Foles jersey, you know, like guilty, guilty of disorderly conduct.
Nice.
What's the score of the game, Your Honor? The Eagles are losing, and you're going to jail. So, what's something we just did that I guess we're going to grind our gears about ourselves here. People complaining about the ownership of the team. We just complained about Bob Nutting kind of for like 5 minutes, but more about like baseball, not having a salary cap or floor. But just remember, like, I remember like there was a protest, like, we're going to go in the game, pay our ticket, and then leave. How does that affect Bob Nutting at all? He's still got your money, you moron. Like, if you want to do something, stand outside, don't buy a ticket and protest. Like, I guess he still gets money from you paying for parking, but maybe not. I guess the city gets that, right? I don't know. So I don't know. It's just, that never made much sense to me, like complaining about the team and then going to the game or watching said game. So
It's like when people burn their jerseys.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
people burn their Steelers jerseys when the Steelers signed Michael Vick. It's like, well, you already bought that. That's not hurting the team at all. Just means that when you're over this, again, like I said earlier in the episode, you know, and again, I'm not faulting people for getting upset over Michael Vick or the national anthem. My point just being that we tend to get very worked up about things, and then 20 minutes later, something else comes along and we've forgotten about it. So once you've burned your jersey and now you're upset about something else and you're back to being a Steeler fan, now you have to go buy another jersey and you've just given the team more money. So it's not really helping.
Maybe it's like fan ADD. It's like, how about this one? This like, now my dad was definitely the anti this. This definitely bothered my dad, and leaving early to beat the traffic. And now I understand, like, there are, like, I've had to do it at games, like there's an emergency or something, and, you know, somebody got sick or you just have somewhere else to be, you know, you're not going to make it for the whole game. Normally that's like, if it's a regular season game, or maybe it's a game that's not super important, I'll give you that one, right? Or let's say your team is getting blown out 30-0 in the first half by a quarterback named Mason Rudolph. You have my permission to leave. Not that you needed it, but like I know you have said this too. Like, it's like the Super Bowl, like when you went to the Detroit Super Bowl, like people were like, it's the middle of the fourth quarter. It's like, all right, time to leave. Or like the AFC Championship game, the Steelers are down by 3. All right, we're out of here. See you later. See you later. Paid all that money to get a ticket in the stands, and I'm going to leave. Like, it's just, I don't know if that's just a Pittsburgh thing or just that's all sports in general, but who does that? Like I could see, like I said, a regular, but like if you paid all that money to go to the Super Bowl, or you're like at a playoff game, unless it's like 20-0 or something, I think you got to stay to the end, don't you?
Yeah, I'm always amazed that that people do that in big games. Like you said, I can see the regular season game, and if it's sort of close but not that close, and it is frustrating if you leave a little later. You're just sitting there forever while thousands of people all take their cars out at the same time. But yeah, it's some people, it's just way overboard, like you said.
It's just, you're already there. Like, clear your calendar. Just take the time and the hour in the parking lot. Like, I've seen some people, even after the game, they'll just go and just sit in their car and have a couple more before. Hopefully they're not driving, or just sit around and talk about the game, or, wow, we really stink, or, wow, did you get your free Coke for staying to the second half? That was such an amazing idea by our athletic director to offer us that after we get. Not that I'm bitter about that or anything. Here, and we talked about this in I know in another episode, but Pitt football sharing Heinz Field. I really, like, I don't even know if an on-campus stadium is the answer, but I know Heinz Field isn't, because it's just way too big for Pitt's fan base. They really need a 30,000 seat stadium, and like just to get rid of like the Penn State and West Virginia fans at bare minimum and Notre Dame fans, just so at least it's just people that want to be there. But I mean, would you care, Tim, if they got a smaller stadium? You gotta say that at least the smaller stadium would help. I think.
Yeah, smaller and on campus would be nice.
It wouldn't even have to be on campus. I think just smaller would help.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about this in our episode about false narratives. You know, people said that kind of ruined the program or decreased the fan base, and I made the argument that it really didn't. But that doesn't mean that it's not, you know, annoying or something that wouldn't be nice to have as a fan. So I totally agree. I would rather have it that way. I don't think it's destroyed the program by any means, but it certainly would be a lot nicer to have something that's smaller and on campus or closer to campus, maybe.
Well, even if you're going to stay in Heinz Field, break out the tarps, man. Let's tarp off some seats and make, you know, because it's just like, you know, you're making the money from TV anyway. Those seats don't matter. They do. I mean, but at the same time, I'd rather, you know, the Penn State and Notre Dame and West Virginia fans could watch it from home like everybody else.
You know, something really petty that grinds my gears about that, Steve, that you might not have on your list, and I apologize if I'm stealing one.
Oh, no, go for it.
It's the fact that because they share a stadium, they never paint the end zones or the logo in the middle of the field anymore.
They do if at the end. They did last year.
When Pitt's done.
No, Pitt did it one time because you know how they have the WPIAL championships? I think they still have one or two there, right? I think. They kind of stopped having it. Then I think they still have a few there. But if it's like the WPIAL, because they'll replace the sod halfway through the season.
Okay.
And normally they try to time that after Pitt's done and the WPIALs are done. So it's like right around Thanksgiving when the grass dies anyway. So Pitt, I know one year put their logo there just to do it. And then because they were ripping up the field and putting new grass in anyway, then they could put the Steelers logo in.
Okay. So very rare occurrences, but most of the time you have the word,
it's
the
generic
word Pittsburgh in one end zone. And then you have these diagonal lines in the other end zone.
But it works for both teams.
That's why they do it, which is annoying. Like maybe
they have Steel Panthers or Pan Steelers.
But they wouldn't.
Maybe they have Panthers in one end zone and Steelers in the other.
Yeah, they would never do that either because it would be a blight for both teams. I just miss that. When Heinz Field was brand spanking new, they used to always do that. Even if they had games in the same weekend, they would paint the end zones, and I'm sure that's a lot of work and there's cost to that. But I just liked how it looked. Like I said, very petty reason, but that's a petty grind my gear thing for me with them sharing a stadium.
Well, that's all my complaints for today. So I'm sure I'll have more as I get older and crotchetier. But I think I feel better. Do you feel better? That was very what do they call it? You know. Relieving.
Yes, you don't need to do yoga or go to a spa.
Cleansing breath. Yeah.
Just need to do a podcast episode.
Thanks for tuning in. If there's anything else that you're complaining about or didn't agree with us, let us know at our website, Pittsburgh Sports Memories, or on Twitter, Pittsburgh Sports Memories, Twitter.